Hi, everybody. We are back in episode 24.
Yep.
Yes, I got it right.
Multiples of three.
I was like going to say 23, and I'm like, no, that was our last one. So,
It's
how's
24.
everybody doing? How's your weekend going? It's been kind of uneventful for us so far. Uh, Obviously, it's just Saturday. So,
Cold and
yeah,
rainy and ugly outside.
it always happens like this in Chicago where we get a brief, like, tiny fall, and then all of a sudden it's going to go right into winter. So,
Well, it's still fall weather,
I know, and even on the and then it's
but
like gets exciting for the news, the weathermen to be like, there's going to be snow flurries or something like that. So they did mention that briefly, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime
that's
soon.
right. Yesterday they were saying that tomorrow there might be some snow flurries, which is,
Yeah, it's not going to stick or anything
not a
like
big
that.
deal.
But we want to talk about something, and we live in Oak Park, Illinois. So, and it is kind of famous for a lot of things. But one of the things, since we love music so much, and it was and still is a staple in our town, I guess you would say, is an old-fashioned record store. I know there's not many left,
That's true.
and especially like, well, did Barnes and Nobles ever sell records or anything like they just sold books? I know like Tower Records is
Yeah,
gone.
they did have a music department in the
Oh,
basement.
in the basement.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
With so many big places that don't sell records, or even small places that have a record store, it's kind of fun and nostalgic to have one. The one in our town has been there for 40 years, and it was run pretty much the whole time by Val, who was the owner of Val's Hala. She had an original location on just off the L tracks on just off the L on the Green Line, and she had to move there when they sold the building, and then relocated and was there. Unfortunately, she passed away a couple years ago, but we have enjoyed going there. David's family has a big history of it, so you can talk about that.
That's true. Yeah, they were Val Camilletti is the name of the woman who owned it, and it was called Val's Hala, after Valhalla, obviously. If you're old like me, I always think of the. It's true. I always think of the Elton John song Valhalla, which was on Empty Sky, which I want to say was
I do
his
not know.
second album, maybe. Anyway, yeah. Well, there's another Elton John story. Well, there's a couple of Elton John stories related to Val's Hala because the first album I ever bought was Honky Chateau by Elton John. Well, it's the album with Rocket Man. It was a
That's true.
pretty
Yeah,
well and
I didn't know that was the name of the
yeah.
album.
And the other hit, well, Daniel was on that album, and Mona Lisa's and Mad Hatters. I almost said Manhattans. We have not had
Yeah, we have not had
Manhattans
any
this
adult.
evening.
Yeah.
But so and then the other big hit on that record was Honky Cat, which people don't recall. That's a song that's not particularly well known any longer. But that was the first album I ever bought with my own money. And then I don't recall whether that was the first album I ever owned, but the first album I got as a present was Abbey Road by the Beatles. I remember
That's a
that.
very
Yeah,
good present.
yeah. But no,
Was
we
that
went
one
there all the
album or
time.
two albums?
No, Abbey Road was a single.
Just
Yeah,
single.
yeah, yeah. That was the last. It was not the last album they released, but it was the last album they recorded. I believe that the soundtrack to Let It Be came out after Abbey Road. It was actually released after Abbey Road, but the last album they recorded was Abbey Road. Anyway, Val's has been around for I don't know. It was around in the '70s for sure. And we were just joking about this because in the old days when you walked in, the front part of the store was a head shop. If you don't know what a head
I
shop
didn't know
is,
what it was.
they sell paraphernalia. I love the technical definition. They sell paraphernalia for the consumption of cannabis and
Tobacco.
like people are actually putting tobacco in
Right.
a glass pipe, But yeah, they sold little one hitters, and they not like I know anything about this.
It was just there.
Not like I went to see the Eagles at Comiskey Park in 1978. No, that's a different.
Just saying.
That's an entirely different story. But no, they sold bongs, and they sold
That is so funny.
rolling
I don't believe they
papers.
have that in their current location.
And then there's a big controversy about outlawing that sort of stuff because they weren't selling drugs, they were just selling things that you might use with drugs. But so eventually there was a law passed, but the hilarious thing about that was so they outlawed head shops, so to speak. So you couldn't sell pipes and things like that that were designed for marijuana. But they still sold rolling papers everywhere, including in like the grocery store. So, of course, theoretically, you could roll actual cigarettes with rolling papers.
Right.
But in the 1970s, nobody was
was doing
rolling their own
that.
cigarettes. So
No.
we all knew what
Those were for.
we all knew what they were for. But anyway, so there was a great record store back in the day because, of course, that's what everybody bought records, bought things on vinyl. It's hilarious now that that's like a hip, cool thing to do.
It is nice that it's come back because for so many years, I mean, obviously with the iPods and things getting smaller and portable and things like that, record players that went completely away. We got one a few years ago. The kids got one for David for Father's Day, and then our son Mark got one from Urban Outfitters.
Mark had his first.
I think he did too.
Yeah.
So kind of funny that our kids were buying records.
And now the problem is that I would prefer. I don't even really know why, because people will say that it sounds better on vinyl. It's a warmer sound. Look, my 58-year-old ears cannot tell the difference, but I do like it. It's kind of fun to have.
And this store has they have cassette tapes, which is fun.
They do have cassette tapes.
They have VHS movies, which also fun. And so many albums into many different categories. It's just kind of nice just to walk in there and just walk around and see everything and touch all the things.
When I was growing up, we always bought albums for people for Christmas and for their birthdays and things like that. And my parents, who were, Great Depression era parents, would go there because it was the record store in town.
Yeah.
And you didn't have Best Buy. And I don't know if Sears had a record department. They may have. But in any event,
I can't recall.
It was convenient. It was close by. So they would go there. So that was a little bit of a bizarre thing to see my parents, who were both born in the 1920s, going into the place with the head shop up front. And I remember going, my sister, one of my sisters was a huge Elton John fan. I always loved Elton John as well, as exhibited by my first album.
Right, with your own money.
With my own money. But my sister has a birthday near Christmas. So I don't recall whether we were going to look for a birthday present or a Christmas present. But I was with my parents and we went into Val's. And the Elton John album Caribou had just come out. That's the one that, no one will know these songs. They were big hits at the time. One of the big hits was Bitches Back. Remember that song?
Yes.
I don't think you'd release a song with, well, maybe you would. I don't know.
Yeah.
But at the time, that was a big hit for Elton John. And I don't know if you've ever seen the album cover, but the cover of the album is he's standing in front of like a painted background. It's got mountains and a scene, but he's wearing this kind of like tiger striped shirt, and it's open all the way down. And in those days, Elton John was still maintaining the fiction of being straight, which I mean, no criticism of him either way, but I guess this passed for being kind of a sex symbol in the mid 1970s. But I remember walking in there with my parents, and my dad was kind of like, "Huh, that's the person she likes," and I'm like, "Well, I like him too."
Right.
I mean, he was the biggest star on the planet in the mid 70s.
Oh gosh,
by far, he was like the Beatles in that day. So that was pretty.
I was
funny.
trying to think. One of the first records that I ever got, and I can't remember the name of the band now, but what's the Freak Out, that song?
Oh,
Chic,
wasn't the band Chic? Wasn't that Nile
maybe
Rodgers?
it was. Yeah.
All right, now you made me look it up.
And not only that, but I got two of my friends got me that for my birthday. I want to say when I was like 12.
Nile. I always wanted to call him Neil, or I thought. Well, I knew it was Nile, but I always wanted to spell it. It's actually spelled like Nile. Yeah, I mean, he is one of the great record producers and is a brilliant musician too. But that's pretty funny. In any event.
And then, of course, the Bee Gees.
The Bee Gees. Le Freak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually love that song.
There you go. Thanks to Al Gore's internet for
Yeah,
helping us
helping us look that
get
up.
the answers. What did you just say? What was the other one? The Bee Gees. Yeah,
Yes.
the Bee Gees were the band that kept reinventing themselves because again, people don't know this, but in the they were kind of a Beatles knockoff. Beatles, Moody Blues, not so much Rolling Stones, but this kind of like that's the sound they sort of emulated originally, and then they had to reinvent themselves and turn themselves into a disco
I
group
loved
of
them
the
back in the
70s.
day.
Well, people criticized disco a lot in those days, but it actually, there's a lot of interesting history behind it. And it was, really, it was one of those music forms that really was for kind of marginalized people. But at the time, we didn't really know that. It was just music on the radio. But anyway, that's
And I remember for when I was in high school, I got Thriller. Three people gave me Thriller, so I was a huge Michael Jackson fan.
did
Apparently,
any of them come from Val's?
maybe. But I ended up keeping one. I gave two to people that are my friends in my class, which was fun. They really liked that. But we just
But
love having the store that's in our town that's local. And actually, if you can't find something online, or if you do find it online, you can just call them. They'll order it if they don't have it, and you can still shop local, which is important.
one of the great stories about Val herself was that, and she told me this story many years later when I was going to buy an album for Emma, our oldest, for Christmas. She had a particular record that she wanted. I don't remember what it was, but it was a weekday, and I kind of snuck away from work and went to the record store. So I was the only person in the record store. So, and she's known my family for ages.
Yes.
So she kind of cornered me and told me this story. But the story was the Beatles had an album out called Yesterday and Today, which came out in like 1965, I guess. So this was earlier in their career. It had a very controversial album cover that featured the Beatles were dressed in like lab coats or like butcher coats, and they had dismembered dolls, for
Yeah.
lack of a better term. Why Capitol Records would have put out a record with that cover in 1965, who knows? But Val worked for one of her first jobs was working for Capitol Records, covering up that album with
With
a
stickers.
with a sticker that had like the new alternate cover, which was just them standing in front of a trunk, like a piece of luggage kind
Right.
of. In
A little more tame.
normal suits, but Yesterday and Today, and it had this sort of like nice sounding title and everything like that, but it had this really really disturbing
Yeah. And what a weird
original
thing
cover.
to like have as part of your job. Hey, can
Yeah.
you cover this up?
Yeah. That was before she owned a record store. However, that album, I will say, we're running late on time, but that album has one of my absolute favorite Beatles songs.
Which is
You'll never guess it in a million
okay.
years.
Fun fact.
It's called And Your Bird Can Sing. It's a fantastic song, and it's obscure and probably very few
Okay,
people
I can't wait to hear
remember
it.
Oh, it's great. It's a great song.
That's awesome. So that's one of the other things is wanted just to share as the holidays are approaching, things are still not open, lockdown, curbside pickup, and as you're buying gifts and everything, just see what's in your neighborhood and see who's got a store that's open because instead of obviously we all love Amazon. We're guilty of that too. It's nice to be able to just support the people who are actually selling things that you could actually buy. So we just wanted to share that. We've got a few pictures of Val. We got a T-shirt.
We did get t-shirts.
So we'll post some pictures. But we just wanted to share that fun fact about old time record store in our town. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.